Wonder where some of these athletes have gone and the things they've accomplished. We got a story tonight about one of the greatest receivers in Alabama football history. That's coming up next. You know, many times we remember the great plays in athletics and the people behind them and really wonder what's happened to them now. Well, we wondered whatever happened to one of the greatest receivers in Alabama history. His name is Dennis Homan, and we found him in Florence. There have been some great receivers in the past at Alabama, but none have made more big plays than Dennis Homan. Grantland Rice once said, "For when that one great scorer comes to write against your name, he writes not if you won or lost, but how you play the game." That saying by Grantland Rice epitomizes Dennis Homan. He was one of the best receivers ever in Alabama history, being named the receiver of the decade in the 60s. Dennis played every game like it was his last. With Kenny Stabler at quarterback, the two teamed up and struck fear in opposing coaches. His career moved on to the pros, to Dallas and Kansas City, but his heart stayed in Alabama.
I would have to say, you know, in the years that I played, the 4 years that I spent in Alabama stick out more than any other because, you know, I was very fortunate to have played under such a dynamic coach and human being as Coach Bryant.
Any big games or any one play stick out in your mind?
One of the biggest plays that I can think of, I was a sophomore. Coach Bryant had just moved me to wide receiver. We were playing Mississippi State over in Jackson, Mississippi. I was not in at the time, but I was standing by Coach Bryant. And I noticed that their cornerback was playing way to the outside. And I remember talking to myself and saying, man, that guy can be beat on a post route. Well, Coach Bryant heard me. And he turned around and he grabbed me and threw me in. He said, well, go do it. I remember running back to Steve Sloan and saying, calling the play to Steve. And Steve hit me with a 65-yard touchdown pass.
Dennis says competitive athletics are over for him now. His life is centered around his church, his work as pharmaceutical representative, and his family. His two children are now involved in athletics, but he doesn't live his life through them.
I've tried to make it an easy-going thing with my children, that if you want to play, if you want to get involved, hey, I'm behind you, but I'm not going to push you into it. So.
Number 25 and number 12 gave thousands of Alabama fans something to cheer about in the 60s and something that'll never be forgotten. And there'll be a roast for Dennis on May 31st. That's a Tuesday night in Florence. Many are expected to attend, including Kenny Stabler, and many other former players and friends will also be present. We'll tell you more about that roast as it gets closer. Well, they call it baseball.
Panelists here tonight, we'd like to welcome you to the 83 Dennis Homan roast. Dennis, better known as the Ring of Fire. You better buckle your seatbelt because this ride is going to be rough and rocky here tonight. Dennis isn't the only one that'll be under the gun. Some of the other panelists up here are going to take some heat also. So anybody on the dais here tonight that cannot stand the heat, now's the time to get out of this kitchen. Roasting one of our favorite sons tonight. Everybody knows Dennis Homan, who made many great catches at the University of Alabama back in the 60s. But he says the one he remembers grabbing the most was the little redhead on University Boulevard.
When the Press Association was presented with the idea of having a Dennis Homan roast, we thought his name was Dennis Who Man. Well, so for those of you who aren't quite sure who Dennis is, we put together a little presentation entitled The Life and Times of Dennis, or How I Was Born a Ho Man. Dennis was bound from destiny right from the start. He's seen here in this earliest picture at the age of 3. Later, it was on to the Robbins Pee Wee football team.
Yes, Gus, and I guess he was about the pee-weeingest football player on that team.
Was on to a career at the University of Alabama,
where he thought he would get to play right away.
But no. Dennis rode the bench.
And his teammates recognized him for doing a good job at it.
Later on, his season did progress, Ron.
Right, he progressed to standing on the sidelines.
Well, Ron, he knew he was good if only he could get recognized. Then by chance, a picture taken with Alabama quarterback Kenny Stabler.
And his career was launched.
And it was a good thing, Ron. He knew a good thing when he saw it.
Associating with the Snake was his ticket to fame and fortune.
But just like Martin and Lewis,
Diana Ross and the Supremes,
Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton,
Ray Perkins and the New York Giants,
Herschel Walker and the Georgia Bulldogs,
Colbert County and Prohibition,
Homan would no longer need Kenny Stabler.
and he liked it.
Let's have a big hand for Ronnie Thomas. I want you to know that what I've been through today already, this is easy, Dennis. When I was beginning to try to get my thoughts together on what I would say at the dishonoring of Dennis Homan, I went to all my old material that I had, my autographed pictures. I found one 8x10 from the Cowboys, Dennis, that you mailed me in 1970. I flipped over the back, and there it had Lance Rensel and Joey Heatherton's autograph on the back. And we won't get into that one about the biscuit making at your house. But anyway, I needed some real supreme support. So shifting through all that material on Dennis Homan, I found Reverend Davidson, the real book that I needed, the good book. The Big B. It's Bowl, Mama Bowl by Browning. That's Al Browning. But on page 164, I quote from the lead sentence of the story that led that chapter off. Dennis Homan is not the kind of guy to carry a grudge. He's quick to forgive. Well, all I can say is, Dennis, thank God for that. The first time I met this guy, I asked Uriel about it a while ago if he remembered. He said, I don't think I do. Uriel was coaching, as you know, at Muscle Shoals, and I was up here, hadn't been here long, trying to hustle up a football tabloid for the 1965 season. So I had heard of the great Dennis Homan, his freshman prowess at Alabama. I never met him. And so I went up on a Saturday morning. Coach Mock really got after it, early. The dew was still on the ground, in fact, to get my preseason story on the Muscle Shoals Trojans. And I noticed this guy standing there out behind him, pitching a football up with a little cap on and that ducktail band like they did back in the 60s and shorts. And I thought, my God, Coach Mock's already headed somebody off the street, some boy, to help him with the grass, I guess. And then Uriel called me over and said, I want you to meet somebody, and remember this guy, he's going to be something. That was Dennis Homan, the guy that I had heard all these great things about, and honestly, I had never been so disappointed. Next, to tell some stories that only a sister-in-law could know. This is a surprise roaster. Dennis was unaware she was going to be here tonight to tell these stories, and they ought to be great. As I said earlier, backup singer for Ronnie Millsap, Dennis Homan's sister-in-law, Marie Tomlinson.
I don't know about, do you have to do it like this, really? Yeah. That's, okay. I don't know about storytelling. Dennis has always told the stories about me. The privilege tonight is that I'm going to try to embarrass him. He's very hard to embarrass, but he's succeeded many times with me. We have a strange but wonderful relationship, not like most brother and sister-in-laws. I always started out with me falling desperately in love with Dennis. I know it's hard to believe, but I thought I'd bring this out in the open tonight. I have nothing to hide, but I was unusually obsessed with Dennis. I wrote love letters to him constantly. I think Kenny read a few of them, or he said he did. My main concern was to have him all for myself. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him, my arms, my hands, my lips. But what would you expect from an 8-year-old? Time takes care of a lot of things. I've grown up, and I'm over you now, Dennis. I guess you know. I just wonder why Charlotte isn't, Speaking of Charlotte, a lot of people ask me if she was a cheerleader for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm asked that constantly. I guess they think that, that's what it takes to win a redneck from Alabama. How am I doing?
The head coach of the University of North Alabama, would you welcome Coach Wayne Grubb?
Thank you, Jerry. Mr. Homan, Charlotte, panelists, I wish I could say something nice about Dennis myself tonight, but I think Marie's taken all the words that anyone could possibly say good about Dennis Homan. She mentioned that strange and wonderful situation. I was talking with Charlotte a little while before we came in tonight, and she was telling me that she and Dennis had a strange and wonderful relationship. That Dennis was strange and she was wonderful. I was also talking with Charlotte about the roast earlier, and she was telling me some things that Dennis had said before coming over tonight, and one of the things that she told me really caught my attention. Dennis is awfully good about talking about himself. As a matter of fact, he asked on one occasion recently to introduce himself to an audience. She said that Dennis and she were sitting on the bed talking about the roast tonight, and she said Dennis kind of laid back and closed his eyes and said, "Honey," said, "do you have any idea, do you realize how many great people are going to be on that podium tonight?" Charlotte thought for just a moment, and she said, "Yes, I have, Dennis. And probably there's going to be one less than you think there's going to be." Dennis amazed all of us in the World Football League after he had retired, left Dallas and the other places that he had been kicked out of, to try it again. He's the first and only football player that I have ever seen have to be put on ice before practice and have to be put on ice after practice. I've heard of a basketball player, and you have too, that has to do that, but Dennis is the only football player that I have ever seen that had to be put on ice. And he literally was put on ice before practice for his knees, and he was put on ice after practice for other reasons, I think. Pat Dyer, our trainer, had informed me of this. I talked with Tom Landry today to try to find something bad to say about Dennis. So I asked Tom, what possibly could I say tonight that would be bad about Dennis? And he said, "Wayne, I really don't have anything bad to say about Dennis." I said, "Well, Tom, can you give me something good to say about Dennis?" He thought for a moment, and he said, "Well, yes, I can. The day that he left camp was the best thing that ever happened to the Dallas Cowboys." Dennis, unlike a lot of former football players, Jim Fuller, Coach Battle, Coach Mock, Coach Stabler, he was an academic-minded person, unlike the rest of us, that just went along for the game. Dennis, academically, was a very alert person. And I have a couple of things to verify this, is the fact that when he came to the World Football League, he was smart enough not to take his money up front. He took it after everything had been said and done and the league had folded.
It's a real privilege for me to be here tonight and to talk to you about some of the things that have taken place in my life in relationship with Dennis Homan. Dennis is one of the fine people that I've had associations with through my coaching career, and I'm real proud of him. But at this time, I want to thank Snake. Snake, Coach Bryant has been known and for his smartness, and I think the smartest thing he did was put Dennis in as a roommate with you. You've done a real fine job with him. I want to congratulate you. I think Snake has kind of took Dennis under his wing from the time Dennis went to Alabama, and it's real encouraging to me to see a product such as Dennis Homan that can go through the test that he's had through life and come out and to be the fine Christian person that he is. And I want to thank his family for my relationships with them. Because in 1961, I accepted a job to go to Muscle Shoals High School, and they didn't have a school, they didn't have a stadium. This was a real challenge to me. I'd been in coaching about 5 years. Everybody thought I was crazy, which I was.
Would you welcome the coach of Jacksonville State, Jim Fuller?
I'm going to prove to y'all that I can read these 2 pages of notes by the time I get through. Several weeks ago, Myra Staggs and Gus Hergert called me and said they were getting something up for the Northwest Alabama Press Association and asked me would I come up, and I said I certainly would, and they told me what it was and said it was a roast for Dennis Homan. And I said I will certainly be glad to come and do anything that I can. 2 weeks later, they informed me that the proceeds from this would be going to the University of North Alabama. Little Dennis Frank was your middle name. Is that actually right? Dennis Frank. Is that right, Kenny? Snake knows. Dennis Frank was born to the proud parents of Mildred and Jesse Homan. Now, I said little Dennis. Now, I need to verify this, Ms. Homan. Back during school, we knew that Dennis was not necessarily a little baby. How much did Dennis actually weigh when he was born? Was it close to 12 pounds? 10 pounds. Well, that is not a little baby. That's not a little Dennis Frank. Jesse come in, and actually, Dennis was so large. He was so large as a baby, they give him measurements as opposed to dimensions. Mr. Jesse looked at that guy, and he said, that kid is big as a damn den. So he was named Dennis and nicknamed Damn Den. Well, this went on for several years, and it was not a bad nickname till Damn Den started to school. It was a little embarrassing for Dennis to say Damn Den, so they changed it to Den Den. Now, I prefer Damn Den as opposed to Den Den. Oh, because all of the problems Dennis is faced with, his image and growing up with a nickname Den Den, being tagged with all these sex problems he's had all his life, and certainly now dealing in drugs, Denny. You come a long way. But I want to tell you something. Matt, Missy, Mr. and Miss Homan, and Charlotte, you got a good man. And I just appreciate the opportunities that I've had to spend some time with Dennis and be with him, and a great, great man for this area. Thank you very much.
Would you welcome the former head coach of the University of Tennessee and great player at the University of Alabama, Bill Battle.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a great pleasure to be back in this part of the state. This is one of my favorite areas, and some great friends and some great people, and particularly on this great occasion, honoring Dennis Homan, a fine man and a fine athlete, former athlete. There's an organ grinder out grinding his organ and playing music, and there's a little monkey over there. And Dennis and his buddy just walk around the corner and walk up on this organ grinder. And the little monkey has on an Auburn sweater, with a big blue sweater with an orange A and a little cap, a little blue cap with an orange A and an orange band around the top of the cap. And his buddy started to grab Dennis because he knew he was going to go berserk when he saw that Auburn monkey. And instead, a big smile came across Dennis's face, and he reached in his pocket and he pulled out a $10 bill and put it in the little monkey's cup and walked on down the street. And the guy said, "That's incredible. I've never seen anything like that." He said, "You hate Auburn. Why would you give the little monkey $10? You hate anything to do with Auburn." And he said, "Yeah, but ain't the little ones cute?"
Charlotte doesn't even know about this, by the way. This is a great... Dennis, I'd like to present you with a brand new red Porsche. And here are the keys. Congratulations. And here's the car. And you'll be glad to know the snake paid for all of it. Would you give a big hand to the snake? Now quarterback for the Saints, Kenny Stabler.
Thank you very much. It's awfully nice for me to be here to help honor Dennis and share some memories with the rest of you. I want to point out one thing that you all have here. I played ball with Dennis in 1964, 5, 6, 7, a long time. This is the only documented picture of Dennis sweating. So we have these on sale out here, so get them, he'll sign them for you. But really, Dennis has meant an awful lot to me, like he has everybody else. He's meant second and 10, third and 10, punt. That's what he's meant to me. And I just wanted to say something to Bill Ferguson over there, who's Dennis's boss. Did Dennis work today? Dennis. Well, he works like he practiced football. He probably won't be there tomorrow either. But Dennis and I were roommates in school, you know, and I wouldn't take anything for that. And he probably owes me quite a bit for being right here where he's at, because we made a deal early. We made a deal to be roommates through school and to help each other out, and we made a little side bet. I offered to let Dennis cheat off my paper on all of our classes. Guys like John Mosley and Les Kelly and David Chatwood, we were all kind of the mental giants of our class, you know. We were, and I think Ronnie Thomas made reference to Dennis chasing or catching a redhead or chasing a redhead around sorority row. Well, that, like everything else, he might have chased it, but he never caught it. But he has a reputation, or had a reputation in school, for his great speed. That's really misunderstood. Dennis was not the fastest athlete ever played at Alabama, certainly not the fastest receiver. I can remember in a game, Dennis running a route that one of the referees threw a delay of game flag. But we used Dennis mostly as a decoy, and after that, and you know, after nobody would even look at him, we decided to throw to him, which was even a bigger mistake. I can remember watching him come out. We helped him with his name too. Jimmy made reference to Din Din. We tried to help him with his name, his nickname at Alabama. We were all playing there, because I can remember our first get-together and our first workout at practice. And the first pass we called, you know, and Dennis ran out there, I threw the ball, and about 5 or 6 of the guys out of the huddle said, "Damn, Dennis." So we helped him as much as we could with that. Ronnie Thomas also made mention to how disappointed he was when he first saw Dennis. Well, Ronnie never had to line up with him. I mean, we were playing people like Ole Miss, Bill Battle's team at Tennessee, and all of them looked like Coke machines with a head on it. And then our receivers were Richard Brewer and, Wormy, and Dennis. And that was very disappointing to look out there and see that. Dennis came to work one day at practice. Finally got him out there. And when he ran his routes, made his cuts, we was lining up in the huddle for the next play. We're trying to get him back to the huddle. He's a great athlete. He was a great athlete. And to be perfectly honest with you and serious with you for 1 second, I have to be appreciative of people like him and all the guys that I've played with, because without people like Dennis Homan and all the guys that I mentioned, and the people that I've played with, I wouldn't be where I am, and certainly Coach Fuller wouldn't be where he's at coaching, or neither would Coach Battle, because we're only as good as the people that we surround ourselves with, and anybody that will surround themselves with a guy like Dennis Homan is certainly to an advantage. He's meant an awful lot to me as a person. He's meant an awful lot to me as a player. I feel very, very close to him in a distant sort of way, because my lifestyle is somewhat different. I'm in a different...
Much of the success of the Dallas Cowboys is based on our ability to draft outstanding people in the first round. Sometimes we draft outstanding football players like Bob Lilly, Leroy Jordan, Craig Morton, Calvin Hill, Dwayne Thomas, Billy Joe Dupree, Too Tall Jones, Randy White, and Tony Dorsett. Then sometimes we draft outstanding pharmaceutical salesmen like Dennis Homan. It was a real privilege to coach Dennis. Although he scored only 1 touchdown in his career with the Cowboys, it was one of the key moments in our team's history. The final score in a 59-13 win over Detroit. Thanks, Dennis. I don't know what we would have done without that. Tom Landry. Congratulations. I'm sure the audience would be interested in knowing these 2 anecdotes about your previous career. Dennis, quotation, Fast Homan. Naturally, everybody knows why Dennis was called Fast Homan while he was playing. But with age, for some reason, he is still called Fast Homan. This is because of the speed with which he does his 2 favorite pastimes: dipping Skol and eating Twinkies. Dennis was an outstanding player, but more importantly, he was a great team player. This certainly carried over to his personal life, because on his wedding night at the Swank Parliament House, with champagne and Charlotte waiting, the first thing he did was to call old teammate quarterback Wayne Trimble to find out what the next play was. Your teammate and friend, now coach at Texas A&M, Jackie Sherrill.
What a rotten panel. Mom don't believe a word of it. None of it's true. The only difference about what I'm going to say and what you've heard already is mine's going to be the truth. A bunch of lies. All of them lies. Darrell Mock. Probably a guy that had the worst temper in all the world. Still does. I remember one night we was playing Leeton over here at Muscle Shoals when we still had those dirt banks for bleachers. He really got hot because we'd just gotten a 15-yard penalty. That referee had stepped it off, and he yelled out across the field, "Referee, you stink." That referee looked over there at Darrell, and he walked off 15 more, and he turned around and looked at Darrell, and he said, "How do I smell from here?" And I would have to say tonight that on a scale of 1 to 10, that Wayne Grubb is a 10 in my book, in a lot of people's book. In fact, I was talking to Dr. Goulart when they were looking for a coach over at UNA, and I saw the list of coaches that were being considered for that job, and sure enough, Wayne was 10th on the list.
Getting better.
Last, and certainly least, The man I made famous. Made him what he is today. Complete nothing. You know, catching his passes was like catching a kickoff. End over end. You've seen a catch of it. Man, that was a challenge to me to catch one of his passes. Kenny's up to his old tricks. You know, he's been in New Orleans a year already. Been arrested 8 times. Charges, impersonating a quarterback. You know, Kenny still holds many records at Alabama. I know he's proud of them. But there's one record he holds there that I promise you will never be broken. In fact, it's going to be there from now on. He's the only one that holds the record for throwing the ball out of bounds to stop the clock. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But the only problem was it was 4th down.
Dennis, the Northwest Alabama Press Association would like to present you with this commemorative plaque for tonight's roast with the Dennis Homan roast on it, the date, and the list of panelists here for your safekeeping, okay? Thank you.